Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about two different variable scopes. I got the primary arms 1 to 8, which I've had for about 3 years, and I've done lots of work and some videos on, and the SwampFox 1 to 10 that I got about a week ago, and I'm still continuing to work with that, but I've already collected a whole bunch of very interesting information. So at distance shooting, both of these scopes are going to be very similar. Because they both have a similar bullet drop compensator. Okay, now on the SwampFox, you do have a couple of different reticle choices, right? They got like they have like the mill scopes and so forth. I chose the bullet drop compensator, which is very similar to the primary arms ACSS. So at distance, they're going to work very similar, and also at distance shooting, you have time to position yourself, to stabilize yourself, and you're taking basically a very well aimed shot. Okay, so you can get you have a lot more time to prepare for that. Now versus if you're shooting in one power and you're moving and shooting, trying to find targets fast, that's different. So the reticle I found makes a very big difference in how quickly you're able to pick up that reticle and get it on target. Okay, so let me show you the two reticles. Okay, I'll show you the SwampFox first. Okay, so this is in one power. I'm going to hold it out there. First, let me start off on the whiteboard over here. All right, so you see the horseshoe with the dot, and then you see the Christmas tree underneath it. And let me get out there into the woods. Now you see when you go into the shadows how it kind of disappears. Okay, so if you light this up, go to 12. If you light this up, you see the whole thing lights up, and it kind of appears like a Christmas tree. Now the nice thing is, even if you get scope shadow, you can still see that reticle, which makes a big difference when you're shooting. When you're shooting with both eyes open, the way that works is left eye sees the target, right eye sees the reticle, and your brain combines the two, and you're able to make the shot. So that scope shadow is not gonna be an issue if you're moving and shooting, as long as you can find that reticle. Okay, now when you turn it off, all right, now you pretty much have to line everything up right there, because if you get into the shadow, it's going to completely disappear. Okay, so let me show you the primary arms now. So primary arms, I'm starting about. So you can see that the circle, the horseshoe is a little bit thicker, chevron's bigger. So when we get up there into the shadows, I think because it's more compact, I think it's a little easier to find it. Just because it's a little bit more compact, and the horseshoe is a little bit thicker. It's still not ideal. Now let me put the light on. Let me turn the illumination on. So now with this, only the horseshoe lights up and the chevron. The rest of the tree doesn't light up. So when you get up into the shadows, I'm going to go to my left hand. So the illumination is very useful here in 1x. Particularly when you're shooting an awkward position and you're slightly off and all you see is shadow. Well, if in that shadow you're still going to see the horseshoe, and then the way that works is the right eye sees the reticle in the shadow, left eye sees the target, your brain combines the two, and you can quickly make your shots even though you're offline. Okay. Now, if you turn off the illumination, you're not going to be able to see the black etched reticle in the shadow. Okay, so you have to keep it on for that. Now, normally when I shoot the ACSS, which I've had for about 3 years, under normal shooting, I keep it off, and the reason is because when you turn it on, it's really easy to forget to turn it off. neither of these scopes has, basically has auto shut off and shake awake like the red dots do. So it's very easy to forget to turn it off, and you're gonna run out your battery. So if I am shooting with the Illumination, what I do is immediately after I shoot, I turn it off. So it's kind of like safety's on, safety off, take your basically turn it on, safety off, take your shot, safety back on, turn the reticle off. Okay, so the turning the reticle on and off for me when I'm using it is goes right next to working the safety. Okay, so basically it goes on before I turn my safety off, and then it'll go back off as soon as I put my safety back on. Okay, so that's kind of like a habit that I've developed, so that I don't forget to turn off the reticle, which I have done many times, and run down the batteries. Okay, so that's a major thing with these. So as far as the reticles, with the primary arms ACSS, right, with that horseshoe and that chevron, it works pretty good in during the day without turning it on, because that horseshoe is a little bit thicker. Whereas with the SwampFox, you pretty much, if you don't turn it on, it's a little bit hard to see it, because the horseshoe is so much thinner, the dot is so much smaller, right? So you can see how that very quickly disappears. Right, so mind you, if you're moving and shooting, yeah, you're going to see a little bit of scope. This is almost realistic in terms of what you would actually see as you're moving around and trying to get on your reticle. Now let me go back to the ACSS. Again, with just the etch, you can see how that's thicker, right? So as you're moving around, you see how because it's small, it's a little bit smaller, a little bit more compact, a little bit thicker, I'm able to pick it up a little bit faster. So that's the thing that stands out the most to me between comparing these two scopes. The primary arms ACSS reticle will work pretty good, without illumination. Whereas the SwampFox Arrowhead, right? That's the name of it, Arrowhead. It's this one here. I got both boxes out. I pulled this one out from a couple of years ago. So we got the primary arms. Oops, dropped that. Versus the Arrowhead. And then they call this, the one that I got is the Gorilla .BDC. And I'm pretty sure that the Gorilla there, won't get you in focus. I'm pretty sure that the Gorilla there refers to the guy's name that invented this rather than a primate. Okay, and then this is the primary arms. Now the primary arms, as you guys saw off to the right, there is a range scale. So you basically line up the height of a man to that scale on the right there, and depending on how tall he comes, that tells you the range that you're looking at. The issue is I've never had a chance to use that, because I normally don't point the scope at people downrange, so I've never been able to actually use that. But anyway, what I was saying, and this is probably the most important part of this video, the primary arms ACSS works pretty good without the illumination. Okay, the SwampFox needs the illumination, I think, in order for it to work well. If you try to work with just the etched reticle, it's a bit harder, in my opinion. Okay, so the reason why, my main concern, right, the reason why I like scopes with etched reticles is normally I prefer red dots. Here, let me show you the setup. This is really my preferred setup, the red dot with the magnifier behind it. Nice thing about this is I can take this off at night, or if I don't think I'm going to be using magnification, and it lightens up the rifle considerably. Those scopes with the mounts weigh about 1.5 pounds, so you know those guns are much heavier, and you're stuck with a heavier gun. So I like this setup, scope with the red dot with a magnifier. However, even though this is solar powered with a battery backup, there's electronics here. Electronics can fail. So I wanted to have, I want to have a couple of scopes that work with just an etched reticle. Well, I've got many scopes, but I wanted another variable scope that works with the etched reticle. And that's the reason why I ended up getting the SwampFox 1 to 10. We got some cloud cover. Let me show you guys real quick before the sun comes back out what these guys look like when you got some cloud cover. There you go. Okay, that's the ACSS. All right, let me put on the light. Okay, so as you can see, only the horseshoe and the chevron light up on this. And like I said, if you've got scope shadow, you know, left eye sees the target, right eye sees the reticle, and you just get it on target and you'll be able to hit it. Now, of course, you guys are looking through a camera, so you're not going to be able to perform that. So get you guys on this one before the sun comes out. I think I'm a little too late there. Hold on, where are you? Oh, there it is. So this with cloud cover. Try to get this stable because I'm standing behind the camera here. So in my opinion, this pretty much works best with the illumination. Yeah, sorry, I was stuck at holding this behind the camera, trying to give you guys a view. But I did the best I could to make sure my batteries are off. Okay, so I want to do a demonstration for you guys. Let me put these guns back together. Actually, let me pause the camera so you guys aren't sitting there watching me put the guns back together. Hold on. Alright, so I'm going to do a demonstration for you guys at those targets over there. And I've got 22 conversion bolt in here because I'm going to be shooting that steel pretty close. So I'm going to be shooting this in an awkward position. First with just the edged reticle, okay? Just the edged reticle, no illumination, okay? So no illumination. I'm going to hold this out like this. Down. Okay. Let me do it now with this one. Again, this is not, that was the primary arms. This is the SwampFox, no illumination, okay? So what's happening is as I'm moving around, the larger horseshoe of the SwampFox is basically almost at the edge of my scope, almost, okay? You know, just because of the awkward position I'm in. Whereas the horseshoe of the primary arms is a little bit closer towards the center. So that's functioning more like a red dot, even though I don't have the illumination on. So in that type of shooting with the etched, with the reticle off, right, without illumination, the primary arms is doing better. Okay, now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn the illumination on. Okay, max power. Okay, big difference. Once I put on the illumination, there's a big advantage now because I can see, you know, in the scope shadow, I can find that big horseshoe. I'm gonna try now the primary arms with the illumination on. Got rounds in there? This is working pretty good. Let me go back to the SwampFox again. Got one last mag here. Again, this is with the illumination. So that was my first time doing that exercise with live fire. I ran through it dry a couple of times with, you know, just looking through the scope. So I kind of had an idea of what to expect, but I didn't want to go through it with live fire because I kind of wanted to do it on the camera for the first time. So my thoughts are that when you got just the etched reticle, okay, the primary arms ACSS has a major advantage in the fact that it has the smaller, thicker horseshoe that you're able to find more quickly and get it in the center of your target. The SwampFox with the larger, thinner horseshoe, we're not looking at the dot or chevron in the center. You can't see that when you're moving this fast, when you're moving around. So we're just looking at horseshoes now, okay? So the horseshoe of the ACSS is smaller, thicker. I can find that, get that on target. With the SwampFox, which has the much bigger horseshoe, what I found at this distance, which I was probably shooting about 40 feet where I was standing over there, it was like almost on the outside, like towards the outer edge of my scope almost, and it was a little harder for me to find it and center it. So it definitely was not as easy to pick up as the smaller horseshoe of the ACSS. Now, when I put on the illumination, they both did almost equally as well. I did expect a major advantage for the SwampFox because the whole thing lights up. But doing this for the first time live, I found that the ACSS was, you know, once you lit that up, it even if you had, it worked just fine. It worked just as good, really. Let me check make sure I turn this thing off. See, I forgot to turn this off. Put that video off position. Turn this off. Nope, left this one on too. That's how you kill your batteries. I hope at some point in the near future they develop, auto off, shake awake for these scopes, because that's the thing I hate about these things, having to remember to turn off the batteries and just constantly running out the batteries when I do use these scopes. Okay. So now that we did that test, let's go through this. I listed a couple of things here that I think are important. So we got on the left side here, we got the primary arm. Actually, let me bring you guys a little bit closer, because I don't think you guys need to see me anymore. All right, so on the left side over here, we got primary arms 1 to 8. Over there, the SwampFox 1 to 10. Now on the magnification, yeah, obviously the SwampFox wins because that's a 10 magnification. At at further distances, that 10 power is going to beat out the 8 power. And the other thing is, I made a note of it down here. At distance, the clarity of the SwampFox is a little bit better. Okay. Now, as far as price, looking at today's price, the primary arms with just the scope, not the mount, is listed at about $370 at Optics Planet. The SwampFox is listed at about $470 at Optics Planet. So the SwampFox is $100 more. Okay. All right, so that's the other thing. There's a price difference. Now, with the mount, okay, actually, we'll talk about the mount a little bit. As far as a true 1 power, the SwampFox is closer to a true 1 power. There is a little bit, I mean, it's not a perfect 1 power. If you get indoors and you look at something that's straight, like a straight line or something, you'll notice that there's still a little bit of a distortion, but the SwampFox is closer to a true 1 power, although not perfect. On illumination, right? If you notice, I put three checks for SwampFox because on the illumination, SwampFox just does. I mean, it's way better because it lights up the whole Christmas tree. So on the illumination side, SwampFox is much better. As far as the light settings, okay. Here's the thing, with the SwampFox, between each of your light settings, let's say from 1 to actually, let me back you guys up a little bit so I can get in front. I don't remember anymore what. So back you guys up just a little bit more. So on the light settings, let's see, the highest power on this is a 12. So all the way up to 12. In between each of the numbers, there's an off switch. Okay, so if you're like in setting 6, you don't have to go all the way. You don't have to go 12 clicks. You just go 1 click up in between. So there's an off position between each light setting. Whereas with the primary arms, all right, yeah, if you're at 12, you just gotta go click 1 back to turn it off. But if you're like in setting number 3 or something, you gotta go click. You gotta get all the way to the end. Okay, so there's only 1 off setting on the primary arms for the light setting versus the SwampFox, which has an off click between each light setting. So that's a big advantage to the SwampFox. Okay, so that's why they got 3 checks. All right, so the number of checks is like, the more significance. Now, as far as no illumination, so if you're just looking at the edged reticle, the primary arms gets 5 checks over there, like 5 stars basically. Okay, so if you're working with just the edge reticle, primary arms is way better because its reticle system is just smaller and more compact. You can see it better when there's no illumination. Okay, so that's a big thing, especially for considering what was important to me. I wanted a scope that would work in 1 power, that would not rely on battery or electronics. Now you might say, why not get just a 1 power, a 1X prism scope? I'm planning to. The ones I looked at, I didn't like, primarily because the adjustment settings were a full 1 MOA at 100 yards. So that means that like at 300 yards, every time I click it, it's moving 3 inches. So I believe that they're planning to update that. So when I do find a 1X prism scope that I like, I will buy that too. But for now, this is what we're talking about. That's where we are. If you're working with no illumination, no battery, no electronics, primary arms wins like 5 stars on that. Okay. As far as the weight and length, okay, the primary arms is a little bit shorter and a little bit lighter. Okay. The SwampFox is a little bit longer, a little bit heavier. We're talking like maybe 2 or 3 ounces, but it is a little bit longer, a little bit heavier. It has to be because it has, it's a 10X versus an 8X. So you figure there's got to be a little bit more weight and a little bit more length involved to get you that. Okay. Generally, more powerful telescopes are generally longer and heavier. Okay. turrets. Okay, with the primary arms, you know, basically you gotta take it's the covered turrets. You gotta take it off. Very basic. Now this is one of the things that I really like on the SwampFox. The SwampFox has the turrets are on the outside. And basically, the advanced turrets where you got to pick it up to rotate it, then you lock it down in place. I gave it 3 stars or 3 check marks on the turrets. This is in line with what you see with like much more expensive scopes. And then what I did is after I got my 0 on this, okay, because there's like numbers over here. What I did is you put a quarter in there, you completely remove the turret and then reset it so that you have a base, right? So now at my 0, that's on the 0 position over here, okay? So, and the same thing with the windage on this side. So that's on the 0 position because I'm able to put a quarter in there, remove this completely, and then set it down where I want it, okay? So it has like a base 0 adjustment. So there's really 2 ways to use the SwampFox as far as shooting at, let's say, distance, okay? You can use the bullet drop compensator, right, and just use that. But also you can also use the turrets where, let's say, you're shooting at 300 yards. You know, once you set your base, then you can say, okay, now you can play with it and figure out that, let's say at whatever, let's say at 200 yards you gotta go 2 clicks up. At 300 yards you gotta go 4 clicks up. I'm just making up numbers, I don't know. But and then you can record that. So instead of using the bullet drop compensator of the reticle, you can use the turrets to make adjustments like that. So there's 2 ways to use the scope, and I like that option. Now, I expect that I would be using the reticle and not adjusting the turrets, but it's a nice option that's there. It gives me something new to play with. So I really like the advanced turret design that they have in this, and also these turrets are also, they got nice grips on them. So that's a big plus. I gave that three check marks. Okay. On the mount, for the mount. Now I didn't put, basically both of these scopes I'm using the same mount. It's from Primary Arms. All right, it goes forward a little bit. It's not the extra long one because they got one that's extra long. It's the normal one. Okay, I'll show you guys up close. All right, so and basically you've got your 2 pins here, your 2 locks over here. So you've got this ring is just behind this, and the other one's way over there. The one that SwampFox offered, right? It was the same price. It sits a little bit lower. So basically, this is about a 1/4 inch lower. I didn't like that. I wanted to keep everything the same height. So I don't recommend you guys get the SwampFox. I'm sending this one back. But I do think it's maybe a little bit lighter, but I would rather have the height consistent. Basically, I have this set right now, so that at 1 power, that reticle is pretty much at the same height as a red dot would normally be. Okay, so that's where I want it to be. So I recommend using the Primary Arms mounts. Now, one of the things that you notice is they got these nuts over here, right? You see how this, you can use a socket. Don't crank down on this, right? Because you're gonna snap these, okay? One of the things I saw in the reviews for this mount is that a lot of people were saying that the screws were getting stripped. Just because you can use a wrench on this to tighten this up doesn't mean that you should use a heavy wrench and tighten it up that much, okay? This is basically you want to finger tighten this. So even though you got a nut there where you can put like a 1/2 inch socket and don't crank down on it because you're going to strip it, okay? You don't need to go that tight. Basically pretend you're using an Allen key and you just got the advantage of because I did use a socket, but I just knew to not crank down on it. I just used my fingers. I went as tight as to a comfortable level, and I stopped, okay? There's a crush washer in there, so that as soon as that crush washer goes flat, you're done. You don't have to keep tightening it up, okay? What else we have talked about? Okay, as far as so when you're looking at this in 1x, all right, and basically you're going to see a little bit of you're going to see the body of the scope a little bit. So on the SwampFox, you see a little bit less of the scope when you're looking through it. Now, I put a check with like a negative there because I don't even think you're going to notice that unless you're like really looking for that, right? Because if I pick up either of these rifles, right, and I look at something, I really don't see the body of the scope that much unless I'm really looking for it. Okay. But if I'm really looking for it, I can tell you guys that this SwampFox, you can see a little bit less of the body of the scope. So the walls of the scope are just seem to be like a tad bit thinner. For some people, that's an important thing. For me, it's not that big of a deal. So that's why I put like a check mark with a negative here, because it's just tiny. It's a little bit better, but it's just a tiny bit better. Okay. Next thing was the clarity at 8x when I'm looking at distance. And what I did is, even though the SwampFox is goes up to actually this is SwampFox. Even though the SwampFox goes up to 10 magnification, what I did is I set it to 8 magnification, and I looked at something at the distance, and I kind of compared these two scopes side by side at 8 magnification, and it seems like the SwampFox is a tiny bit more clear. Not by much. That's why I put a check with a negative next to it. Now, it might be that I'm here in the forest, you know, looking at, let's say, 200 yards. If I get out to an open field, it might look a little bit different to me. Other thing worth mentioning is that the primary arms, like I said, I've already had it for 3 years. You know, there's a chance that maybe, I mean, even though the glass looks like it's clean, you know, like I said, I've been using it for 3 years. So that might have something to do with the fact that the SwampFox, which is newer, right, it's a week old, seems like it's a tiny bit clearer to me. Throw lever, okay? The SwampFox has this nice big throw lever over here that that's actually adjustable. They give you like 8 screws, and there's 3 positions that you can, you know, I put it in the center position. And this is nice because you can quickly shift it over to side. The one thing I'm going to say is this is kind of a good and bad, depending on how you use this, because this sticks up a lot. So this is going to catch stuff, all right? So this is going to snag onto things. So you may not like this. You may not like the fact that this sticks up so much. That's part of the reason why they made this removable. However, if you remove this, you know, this is, you know, it takes a lot longer to flip around. So that's why I put it on there. Now, on the primary arms, they have a throw lever on here, but that's like really is set really low, okay? And I mean, basically, it's almost like it's not there. My feeling is that they probably should have made this throw lever here just a tad bit bigger, right? I like the idea that it's low and it's not going to catch on stuff, but they probably could have made it 2, maybe 3 times bigger, and it still would not have been this big. Okay, now this one also shoots straight out, as opposed to the other one, which is more of a V design. So my feeling is that primary arms should have made it about half this height and maintain that V design that they have. Right, you see how this has more of like a V design? So they probably should have made it at least twice as tall, maybe 3 times as tall, and maintain this V design over here. That probably would have been very usable. That's why. So like I said, as far as the throw lever, yeah, there's a big throw lever on here. By itself, this is way faster, way more comfortable. But if you've got this in a sling and you're moving around, you know, and that's catching stuff, that can kind of work against you as well. So that's why I put like a check mark with a question mark next to it. That's kind of a preference, okay? And then lastly, battery. And I've kind of put an X to both of them because I think that the battery life is going to suck on both of them if you forget it on. Although on the SwampFox, I put an X with a negative because the entire reticle with the Christmas tree underneath it is illuminated. I think that's going to run out a little bit faster, okay? But the battery situation on both of these is going to completely suck if you forget to turn it off, okay? Finally, let me back you guys up a little more because I don't think you guys need to be that close anymore. All right, finally, let's talk about these 2 scopes, where I think they fall in, okay? So for shit hit the fan, right? SHTF. Which one would I pick? I would probably go with the primary arms because of that better etched reticle with the thicker horseshoe. If my battery dies, right, and I can't replace it, that's going to be more useful. That thicker etched reticle is going to work better without battery power, okay? Now, so that's for SHTF. Now, for and then over here I have distance shooting and normal everyday stuff. Okay, so normal everyday stuff where, hey, if the battery runs out, I got 10 more batteries, ready to go. So for normal everyday, where you can expect to get all the batteries that you want, I kind of like the SwampFox. For distance shooting, it's a 10x. So if I'm shooting 300 yards or 400 yards, yeah, I'll take the 10x. So that's my feeling on this. Okay, for shit hit the fan, give me the primary arms. It's got a better reticle, I think, that's gonna work better without power. For everyday fun shooting, I'll take the SwampFox, because if my battery runs out, I got 20 more waiting to be lined up, ready to go in there. Okay. Also at distance shooting, again, if you're at the range trying to see how tight groups you can get, that 10x is going to be a little bit more comfortable to shoot. And I do plan on taking the SwampFox out to a longer distance range and trying that out. So you'll see a video coming up on that soon, probably in a week or two, probably maybe 3 weeks, depending on what my schedule is like. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. And like I said, there's a lot of things to talk about. So I kind of came at it from a very specific direction. And the direction that I was primarily interested in is, this is my preferred setup right here. Red dot with the magnifier. But in certain circumstances, let's say I don't think I'm going to be able to get batteries for my red dot. What's the next best thing? And within that, looking at variable scopes, that's kind of where I'm, that's the perspective that I'm coming at this from. And at some point in the future, I'll also get like a 1-power prism scope, and we'll try that out as well. I just haven't seen anything I really like. And again, my issue with the one that Primary Arms has out there is that it's a 1 MOA adjustment. So at 100 yards, 1 click moves you 1 full inch. It should be at least a ½ inch. I heard that they're gonna update that. As soon as they update that, I'm gonna buy it, and we'll try that out. So thanks for watching. Drop some comments below. Let me know what you think, what your experiences are. If you have different scopes that you're using, let me know what you think. I'll talk to you guys soon.